So kind of combining what Sarah and Meg have talked about, this is a specific example of how we're using story maps for one of the community engaged projects that we're doing. This is the pilot project for the Big Ideas Incubator. It's focused on food access and food insecurity and improving these accesses and information sharing in our community. So this is kind of one avenue that we are exploring within that larger project. So I want to start with, here's one map, right? It's a pretty static map. This is the community gardens in Lawrence under the Common Ground program. This map is really useful in that you can very quickly see the spatial distribution of community gardens. You can see where community gardens are not under this program. And if you want to learn more about the specific community gardens, you can click on, the little flower and it'll tell you who's in charge of that garden, where that garden is, and kind of some other additional facts about the garden. What's interesting about the community garden Common Ground project is there's different ways that those gardens are used. So some of them are incubator gardens that are not actually accessible to the public for them to, kind of self-harvest. There are other gardens on here that people can go and self-harvest from. There are other gardens that they grow food and they provide it to just food. So what we're missing here is some of the engagement pieces, some access information, and some other details. But the map itself is useful in getting information out about a very specific element, but we're kind of lacking some engagement information. So one of the specific gardens on there is at the Sunrise Project, which is one of our community partners. And the Sunrise Project, if you go to their website, has these wonderful pictures of people actually engaging with the space. It has information about the gardens, how you can access them, the type of access. They have some accessible beds. So that's one of the things that's kind of lacking on the static map are there accessible beds? And there's additional information here about the fact that you can come and self-harvest. But one of the things that we're missing here is what is being grown, what's available, what's in season, how people are using it. So again, we're seeing people engaging with the space. We have some additional information about the space, but it's not tied back to kind of a larger map to understand how people can access various spaces around town. Another element, and this is one of our other community partners within this larger project, is the Lawrence Public Library Seed Library. So if you're not familiar with the Seed Library, these are seeds that are donated to the Lawrence Public Library you can request up to 5 different types of seeds. You go pick them up and then you take them home and grow. And so instead of a community garden, this is a function where you can kind of start to grow your own food. But what we're missing in this piece is kind of this engagement again of who's growing what successes and failures did they have, what are they using the food for. And so the beautiful thing about story maps is we can start to bring all of these elements together and merge them to kind of share community stories and really get that engagement piece while also sharing out information and providing people the opportunity to understand how they can access food, where they can access it, but then also talk to each other about successes, failures, how they're using these food materials, recipes, etc. So our questions are, for the story map that we're creating, how are community members accessing community gardens, the programs, kind of like the seed library, other food resources, so just food as an example, or are gardens providing produce to just food and people are accessing the food that way? How are community members using the gardens? So are there more growers who are then sharing food out? Are there people accessing the gardens to do self-harvest? How are they doing that? How are they accessing it? Are they walking? Are they using vehicles? Are they using public transportation? Is that accessible? Are the walking routes safe for them? And then how can we build community through the sharing of food stories and recipes? So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach of providing information to people about how to access the food, gaining information about how they're accessing the food, or if they can't access the food and why, and then continuing to build community through the sharing of food knowledges, recipes, growing of food, etc. So this kind of lends us to the telling the story of community engagement through the building of this map itself. One element is walkability audits. So one of our faculty partners, this is an example of a walkability audit that they did with the DOT agency up in Wyandotte County. So understanding, are the gardens walkable themselves? Are they accessible? How are they, or how are they not accessible? Do people feel safe? And so helping provide information to people about how to access the gardens and how they might be able to do that. And then also gaining information about how they're not accessible so that we can share that information either with the city or other partners so that we can make those things more accessible. The other big push for the story map is kind of connecting community members to resources, right? So community gardens around Lawrence have different access models. One of the things that we've struggled with is getting that information to users so they know how to access gardens, when, and why. And then also for those gardens that are not self-harvest, making sure that folks know that so they're not going in and self-harvesting if that's not appropriate. Also, foods are seasonal and differ by garden. So you might have a particular set of things that you'd like to harvest for something that you want to make, but you don't necessarily know where that's being grown and when. So the story map will also be able to house information about the foodstuffs that are being grown in each garden and generally the seasons in which those things are ripening so that people can access gardens when appropriate and they don't have to go to multiple gardens to find the things that they need. So that's kind of the genesis of building this story map. We also recognize that not everyone has equal access to digital resources. So there are analog resources and support access materials that are also being created to supplement this that are available at various food outlets. So Just Food, Lawrence Public Library, acknowledging that the story map's not going to reach everyone, is not going to be accessible to everyone, and everyone might not be comfortable accessing this kind of digital resource. So I just wanted to put that out there, like, as robust as these story maps can be, we also have to acknowledge that we have to partner these with other elements to make sure that all of our community members can access this information in ways that is comfortable to them. So the final element in the story map is really this community engagement building community, because everyone eats, everyone has their own recipes and stories around food. So using the story map to kind of build community through these shared stories and recipes. This is a podcast version. We're really interested in cookbooks as an element of kind of building community and sharing. So thinking about creating a community cookbook through the resources and the recipes that are garnered through the story map, and using that story map as a place to kind of build those community cookbooks. If you're not familiar with this podcast, it's wonderful and it's fascinating. Cookbooks are just kind of fascinating, especially the different types of cookbooks. One's recipes from Maine refugee community, which is really interesting, a Midwestern specialty cookbook. So if you have any interest in it at all, this podcast is wonderful. So the way that story maps can engage with this is the fact that, one, we can house really robust stories and recipes on the story map itself in these various layers that can be added onto the story map. And really in beautiful ways and engaging ways, telling stories, but also sharing recipes, and then also tying that back to here's where the ingredients can be found in the community gardens and the food access points around the city, right? So kind of connecting all those dots. This is an example of one that was created and just kind of showing you how beautiful these stories can be and engaging and really kind of building a sense of community and the different types of the ways in which you can use different types of produce to create different recipes from different cultures and backgrounds and and personal histories and families to kind of show the full breadth and depth of our community. And then there's also an interactive element with story maps. So this story map also includes a place where there's a form on the story map where people can submit their own recipes and their stories about those recipes. So it's a really robust engagement tool. Not only can we provide information and kind of start to build that community, but people can then engage themselves in a way that's comfortable for them, to kind of start to collect all those stories and really provide a place where our community members can engage with each other on the platform. So that's kind of where we're at. That's all the different fun elements that we're building in the story map and how robust these story maps can be in one specific example.
How long has the story map been running, Nicole?
The platform itself, or ours isn't complete yet. So we're still building ours, but the platform itself has been in existence for at least 8 years. It recently just went through a reboot, so it looks quite a bit different than it used to. But ArcGIS has been running the story map platform for at least 8 years, is how long I've been using it. My background's geography, so I'm kind of familiar with it.